They tried to hold her back, but she broke through every barrier. This black girl's golden triumph is a story of defiance, courage, and undeniable talent. It was a warm, sunny afternoon in a small, bustling town. The local high school was alive with the sounds of cheering parents and enthusiastic athletes preparing for the upcoming regional sports championship. In the middle of it all was Aisha, a talented and determined young black girl with dreams as bright as the gold medals she aspired to win. Aisha had always loved running. It was her escape, her passion, and her gift. She could feel the wind rushing past her, the pounding of her feet in sync with her heartbeat, and the thrill of crossing every finish line. But despite her natural talent, the journey to this competition had been anything but smooth. The high school's track coach, Coach Braden, had never made her feel welcome. A middle-aged man with decades of experience and a staunch preference for his star athletes, Coach Braden rarely gave Aisha a second glance. In his eyes, she didn't fit the mold of a winner. "Speed isn't enough," he'd muttered once, not even looking up from his clipboard. "It takes discipline, and discipline isn't for everyone." But everyone knew what he really meant. Coach Braden openly favored the privileged, well-connected students, who he believed would bring glory to the school, and by extension to himself. Aisha was neither privileged nor connected. She was the daughter of a hard-working single mom, Mrs. Parker, who worked double shifts at a diner to make ends meet. Despite the odds, Mrs. Parker always encouraged Aisha to dream big and to never let anyone dim her light. "Don't let anyone tell you what you can or can't do," her mum would say, clutching Aisha's hand tightly after another grueling practice session she wasn't even invited to. "You were born to shine," but Coach Braden didn't see it that way. Time and again he brushed Aisha aside, giving her the worst lanes during practice, dismissing her requests for feedback, and, worst of all, excluding her from key team-building activities. It was no secret to the other students either. Some whispered in the locker room about the unfairness, but no one dared to speak up. Others laughed behind Aisha's back, mocking her for even trying. Still, Aisha refused to give up. She would practice alone after official sessions ended, running laps until the sun dipped below the horizon and the track was bathed in twilight. She didn't need Coach Braden's approval to know she was destined for greatness. Her determination burned brighter with every cold shoulder and snide comment. One day, during a particularly grueling practice, Aisha overheard Coach Braden talking to another staff member. "She'll never make it to the top," he scoffed. "She's not championship material. It's a waste of time." The words stung like a slap, but they also fueled her like never before. If Coach Braden wouldn't believe in her, she would believe in herself even harder. And if no one else saw her potential, she'd make sure the world couldn't ignore it. The regional championship was now just weeks away, and while the other athletes were fine-tuning their techniques under Coach Braden's meticulous supervision, Aisha continued to train on her own. With the help of her mom, who cheered her on tirelessly, and a supportive mentor from the local community, Mr. Carter, a retired sprinter who once competed on the national stage, Aisha pushed herself to limits she never thought possible. As the days passed, whispers about the championship began to spread. Some questioned whether Aisha would even show up. Others speculated she'd embarrass herself without proper coaching. But Aisha kept her focus laser sharp. She knew the track didn't care about whispers or judgments. It only cared about who crossed the finish line first. On the morning of the championship, Aisha stood at the starting line, her heart pounding like a drum. The stands were packed, the air electric with anticipation. Coach Braden barely acknowledged her presence, focusing instead on his favored athletes. But as the announcer called the runners to their marks, Aisha closed her eyes and whispered to herself, "You were born to shine." Little did anyone know, what was about to unfold on that track would leave the audience stunned and rewrite the narrative of what determination and heart could achieve. The sun bore down on the track, glinting off the metallic bleachers as the competitors stretched and prepped for the biggest race of their lives. Aisha stood near the starting line, her nerves tightly coiled like a spring. She could hear the buzz of the crowd, the murmurs of excitement and anticipation, and the occasional jeers from classmates who had doubted her. From the corner of her eye, she noticed Coach Braden pacing, clipboard in hand. He wasn't even looking in her direction. His focus was entirely on Brianna, the school's golden girl of the track team, a tall, blonde athlete who epitomized what Coach Braden considered a winner. Brianna smirked at Aisha as she walked past. "Good luck," she said, her tone dripping with sarcasm. Aisha clenched her fists, but kept her composure. She wasn't here for petty remarks or distractions. She was here for one thing: to win. The announcer's voice boomed through the speakers, calling the runners to their lanes. Aisha stepped into position, feeling the rough texture of the starting block beneath her fingers. The adrenaline coursed through her veins as she took a deep breath, her mother's voice echoing in her mind. "Don't let anyone tell you what you can't do." As the runners settled into their stances, the stadium seemed to hold its breath. The starter raised his pistol, the sharp crack of the shot cutting through the air. They were off. Aisha exploded off the blocks with a burst of speed, her feet pounding against the track like thunder. For the first few meters, she stayed level with the pack, her mind focused and clear. The rhythmic chants of the crowd faded into the background, replaced by the sound of her breathing and the steady cadence of her strides. Brianna surged ahead, her long legs eating up the distance. Coach Braden yelled from the sidelines, his voice barely audible over the roar of the spectators. "Keep it up, Brianna. You've got this." Aisha gritted her teeth and pushed harder. Her legs burned, her lungs begged for air, but she refused to let up. She remembered every dismissive comment, every sneer, every moment of being overlooked and underestimated. This was her moment to prove them all wrong. As the runners rounded the final curve, Aisha found herself neck and neck with Brianna. The crowd was on its feet, the energy in the stadium reaching a fever pitch. Coach Braden's expression shifted from smug confidence to shock as he saw Aisha matching his star athletes. For a split second, Aisha locked eyes with Brianna. The other girl's face twisted in determination, but there was a flicker of doubt, a moment of realization that Aisha wasn't about to back down. With the finish line in sight, Aisha drew on every ounce of strength she had left. She could feel the collective weight of expectations, doubts, and hopes propelling her forward. The cheers of the crowd blurred into a single, deafening roar. In that moment, it wasn't just about the race. It was about rewriting the narrative, about proving that talent and determination transcended bias and prejudice. She crossed the finish line. For a heartbeat, everything was still. Aisha stumbled to a stop, her chest heaving as she tried to catch her breath. She glanced at the scoreboard, her vision swimming, and there it was, her name at the top. She had done it. Aisha Parker had won gold. The stadium erupted. The noise was overwhelming, a cacophony of cheers, gasps, and applause. Aisha looked around, her eyes searching the crowd until they landed on her mother. Mrs. Parker was on her feet, tears streaming down her face as she clapped and shouted, "That's my girl, that's my Aisha!" On the sidelines, Coach Braden stood frozen, his clipboard dangling limply in his hand. The disbelief on his face was almost comical. He turned to Brianna, who had collapsed onto the ground, panting and shaking her head in defeat. For once, he was speechless. Aisha raised her arms in triumph, a smile breaking across her face as she soaked in the moment. She had done it. She had proven them all wrong. And in that instant, she wasn't just a runner, she was a symbol of resilience, a testament to the power of perseverance in the face of adversity. The echoes of the crowd's cheers still rang in Aisha's ears as she stepped onto the winner's podium, the gold medal gleaming around her neck. Her heart swelled with pride, but she couldn't help noticing Coach Braden standing at the edge of the track, his expression a storm of disbelief and discomfort. As the official handed Aisha her medal, she felt the weight of the moment sink in. This wasn't just a win for her. It was a statement, a breaking point in a long journey of overcoming systemic bias and personal prejudice. The applause was deafening, but for Aisha, the real victory was in proving to herself that she was capable, no matter who doubted her. After the ceremony, the crowd began to disperse, leaving Aisha alone with her thoughts. She made her way back to the locker room, only to find Coach Braden waiting for her. His posture was stiff, his arms crossed as if bracing himself for what he was about to say. "You ran a good race," he said, his tone begrudging, avoiding eye contact. Aisha stared at him for a moment, her expression unreadable. "Thank you," she replied simply, though her voice carried an edge of resolve. There was an awkward silence before the coach finally continued. "I'll admit, I didn't think you had it in you. I was wrong." It was a rare admission, and for a moment, Aisha wondered if he was being sincere. But then he added, "Maybe you were just lucky today." The words hung in the air like a sour note. Aisha felt her stomach churn, but instead of responding with anger, she took a deep breath and met his gaze. "It wasn't luck," she said firmly. "It was hard work, determination, and believing in myself when no one else did." Coach Braden looked taken aback by her confidence, but before he could reply, another voice cut through the tension. "She's right," Mrs. Parker said, stepping into the room. She had been waiting outside, but she couldn't remain silent any longer. Her presence filled the space with a quiet authority. "Aisha didn't need your approval to succeed. She needed a fair chance, and she created it for herself when you wouldn't." The coach's face flushed, and he shifted uncomfortably. He muttered something under his breath and walked away, leaving Aisha and her mother standing together. Mrs. Parker turned to her daughter, her eyes glistening with pride. "You showed them, baby. You showed them all." Aisha smiled, but there was a trace of sadness in her expression. "I just wish it didn't have to be like this, Mom. I wish people didn't see me as less just because of the color of my skin." Mother placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder. "You can't change everyone's mind, Aisha, but you can inspire them to think differently. And today, you did that." The media frenzy. The next day, news of Aisha's victory spread like wildfire. Social media was ablaze with clips of her triumphant finish, accompanied by headlines like, "Black athlete defies racist coach to win gold." Comments poured in from around the world, celebrating her resilience and calling out the injustices she had faced. Aisha's story became a beacon of hope for others facing similar struggles. Messages flooded her inbox. Young athletes thanking her for inspiring them, parents sharing stories of their children who had faced prejudice in sports, and even strangers offering their congratulations and admiration. Meanwhile, Coach Braden found himself at the center of criticism. The public wasn't kind to him, and his refusal to train Aisha became a focal point of the conversation. While some defended him, claiming he was simply supporting his favored athlete, the overwhelming majority called out his bias and unfair treatment. Brianna, too, faced her own reckoning. In an unexpected twist, she posted a message on social media, acknowledging Aisha's talent and apologizing for her behavior. "I was wrong to look down on you," she wrote. "You earned that medal, and you deserved better from all of us." Despite the whirlwind of attention, Aisha remained grounded. She knew her journey was far from over. The gold medal was a milestone, not a destination. She continued to train, driven not just by her love of running, but by a newfound mission: to break barriers and inspire others to do the same. Mother encouraged her to use her platform to advocate for equity in sports, and Aisha eagerly embraced the opportunity. She began speaking at schools, sharing her story with young athletes who looked up to her. The message was clear: you are more than what others think of you. Your worth isn't defined by their opinions, it's defined by your perseverance. Aisha's victory sent shockwaves far beyond the track. Her story had become a national conversation, sparking debates on equality in sports, systemic racism, and the power of perseverance. As the attention grew, so did the demand for accountability within the local athletic community. The school board announced a formal investigation into Coach Braden's behavior, prompted by complaints from parents and former students. The scrutiny wasn't just about Aisha. It unearthed a pattern of bias in how opportunities were distributed among athletes. For years, promising black students had been overlooked in favor of less talented, more privileged peers. At a community meeting held in the school auditorium, dozens of parents and students showed up to share their experiences. One by one, they stood and spoke, their voices trembling with emotion but steady with resolve. "I've seen my son benched season after season," one mother said. "He's got talent, but he's never given the chance to prove it. My daughter quit sports altogether because she couldn't handle being constantly ignored," another father added. "No child should feel like they don't belong." When it was Aisha's turn to speak, the room fell silent. She stepped forward, gold medal glinting under the bright lights, and looked out at the sea of faces. "I didn't ask for this fight," she began. "All I ever wanted was to run, to prove to myself that I was capable. But when I was told I wasn't enough because of the way I look, I knew I couldn't just stay silent. This medal isn't just mine. It belongs to everyone who has ever been told they don't belong. It's proof that we do." Her words were met with a standing ovation, tears glistening in the eyes of many in the crowd. Mounting pressure forced Coach Braden to step down from his position. While he issued a statement of regret, it was clear that his resignation wasn't just about Aisha's case. The community had lost trust in him, and his departure was seen as a necessary step toward rebuilding fairness in the program. Aisha's former teammates had mixed reactions. Brianna, in particular, struggled to reconcile her feelings. She approached Aisha after practice one day, awkwardly shifting her weight from one foot to the other. "I wanted to say, I'm sorry," Brianna mumbled. "I was jealous, and I let that cloud everything. You didn't deserve what happened." Aisha studied her for a moment before offering a small, forgiving smile. "Thank you for saying that. It means a lot. It wasn't a friendship, but it was a start." Inspired by Aisha's story, local athletes, parents, and activists formed a coalition to ensure equity in the school's sports programs. They worked to establish new policies, including anonymous feedback surveys, diversity training for coaches, and mandatory performance-based evaluations for athletes. Aisha became the face of the movement, not because she sought fame, but because her story resonated so deeply. She was invited to speak at conferences and events, always returning to the same core message: change doesn't happen overnight, but it starts with standing up for what's right. Her social media platforms exploded with followers, many of whom shared their own experiences of overcoming bias and adversity. Each message fueled Aisha's determination, reminding her that her victory was about more than a race. It was about breaking barriers. While Aisha embraced her role as an advocate, she didn't lose sight of her dreams. Offers from college track teams poured in, each one eager to recruit the girl who had defied the odds. With her mother's guidance, she chose a school that valued not just her athletic abilities, but her voice as a leader. As the weeks turned into months, Aisha continued to train, balancing her advocacy work with her studies. Her mother, too, found a renewed sense of purpose, volunteering to mentor other parents navigating similar challenges. One evening, as Aisha and her mother sat on the porch, watching the sun dip below the horizon, Mrs. Parker turned to her daughter. "This isn't just your story, Aisha. It's ours. It's the story of everyone who dared to believe in themselves when the world told them not to." Aisha nodded, a quiet determination in her eyes. "I just hope it inspires someone else to take that first step." Her mother smiled. "It already has." Months after Aisha's victory, the community saw visible changes inspired by her journey. The school's athletic department had undergone a complete overhaul. New coaches were hired, training regimens were redesigned, and inclusivity became a cornerstone of the program. Student athletes, once divided by invisible barriers, now trained together with mutual respect and camaraderie. Local businesses and organizations rallied behind Aisha's message, sponsoring diversity workshops and youth mentorship programs. The annual town track meet was renamed the Parker Invitational, honoring Aisha's courage and her role in sparking change. What had started as a single race now symbolized a united community striving for equality. At the inaugural event, Aisha was invited to light the ceremonial torch. As she stepped forward, her gold medal glinting in the sunlight, the crowd erupted in cheers. She took a moment to scan the sea of faces. Her mother, her teammates, former critics, and new supporters, all united in celebration. "This torch represents more than a race," she said into the microphone, her voice steady. "It represents a brighter future for every child who dares to dream, no matter where they come from or what they look like." The applause that followed was deafening, and Aisha felt a deep sense of fulfillment. Her story had become more than just her own. It was now a collective movement. Despite the attention and accolades, Aisha remained grounded. She was determined to keep pushing herself, both on and off the track. Her college training began, and she quickly proved herself as a force to be reckoned with in the collegiate circuit. Coaches marveled at her work ethic and her ability to inspire her peers. But it wasn't just her athleticism that stood out. It was her leadership. Aisha became a mentor to younger athletes, sharing her story and encouraging them to rise above challenges. She often reminded them, "You don't have to be perfect to succeed. You just have to believe in yourself enough to try." The college experience wasn't without challenges. Balancing academics, training, and advocacy work was demanding. There were moments of self-doubt and exhaustion, but Aisha leaned on her mother and her newfound support system to persevere. Each hurdle she overcame added another layer to her legacy. One unexpected turn of events was the letter Aisha received from Coach Braden. In a handwritten note, he expressed remorse for his actions and acknowledged the damage his bias had caused. "I know I can never undo the harm I've done," he wrote, "but I hope you know that your success has opened my eyes to the prejudices I carried. I'm taking steps to educate myself and ensure I never treat anyone the way I treated you." Though skeptical at first, Aisha chose to see the gesture as a step toward growth. "It's not about forgiving him for what he did," she told her mother. "It's about knowing that change is possible, even for people like him." Years later, Aisha stood on the podium again, not as an athlete this time, but as a speaker at a national sports conference. She shared her journey, the lessons she'd learned, and her hopes for the future. "I'm not here because I was the fastest or the strongest," she said, her voice steady. "I'm here because I believed in myself when others didn't. And because of that belief, I was able to show the world that we all deserve a chance to shine." The standing ovation that followed was a testament to the power of her story. As the years passed, Aisha's influence only grew. Her story became a reminder of the resilience of the human spirit and the importance of standing up for what's right. The gold medal she won wasn't just a symbol of athletic achievement. It was a victory for justice, equality, and the unwavering power of self-belief. And for every young athlete who took to the track, Aisha's story served as a beacon of hope, proving that even in the face of adversity, greatness is possible.